Do you feel detached from life, melancholy, or just plain uninspired by it all and you're not sure why? Are you wondering what the purpose of things is? Should this be true, you could be experiencing a dark night of the soul. But not everything is negative. Your life may entirely change once you understand what a dark night of the soul is and how to overcome it as a part of a spiritual awakening. What is a dark night of the soul? A moment of detachment and emptiness known as a dark night of the soul occurs when we feel wholly cut off from source consciousness, other people, and ourselves. One may view the black night of the soul as a bad thing. But when looking at things more broadly, the reverse is true. There are two reasons for the dark night of the soul. It is both ego dying and a soul rebirth. Our soul is waking as we go through a dark night of the soul, propelling us ahead and raising our vibration to become a new version of ourselves. The ego and identity that have kept us in this shape must also die at the same moment. It has to be exposed so that we may face it, let it go, dissolve it, and allow the present iteration of ourselves to change and transform into a more adaptable version of themselves. It is only after that we may advance into the more advanced form of ourselves that our soul is constructing. A dark night of the soul is a process that enables us to confront our identities and let go of our preconceived notions about who we are. It enables us to remove our old identities and skin in order to expose our true selves and become closer to the core of our souls. You are momentarily in between the old and new versions of yourself while you are going through a dark night of the soul. It takes distance and time to recognize the old, let go of it, and discover the new. 7 symptoms of a dark night of the soul. The primary indication of a black night of the soul is the absence of meaning or purpose in life. It lacks flavor. No highs or lows exist. Even simple chores require a lot of work to do. The main psychological aspect of a dark night of the soul is feeling lost and unsure of what to do. Some or all of these symptoms may apply to you. Sadness. You experience intense sadness for no apparent cause. You can be depressed about the way things are in your life, the globe, or humanity. Helplessness. If you have no control or capacity to alter your life, you might feel helpless and powerless. Lack of inspiration. You don't feel as motivated or driven to do anything, especially the activities you used to find interesting. You're no longer happy with anything. Disconnection. You feel alone, as though no one can really relate to you. You get the impression that something is missing, and you don't belong. Unworthiness. You believe that you are not deserving of the things that you formerly wanted, or that other people may have, or that you are not good enough. Suffering. You have a sense of being imprisoned and doomed to an empty or painful existence devoid of escape. Absence of self-control and willpower. You struggle to take action and proceed. Clinical depression might be confused with a dark night of the soul. It is not the same thing, though. More accurately, it's spiritual depression. A common feature of regular depression is self-focus. The sadness or depression that follows a dark night of the soul is primarily focused on life's bigger, more profound issues. It takes into account issues such as, what is the meaning of life? What brings me here? And what's my goal? A dark night of the soul differs from a typical depression in that nothing much changes when the depression passes. Your entire existence is changed when a dark night of the soul ends. What is the point of a dark night of the soul? A lot of individuals would view the dark night of the soul as something that has to be resolved, surmounted, or endured. But a real dark night of the soul is something that permanently alters you. At the conclusion of a dark night of the soul, you will discover that something has, thankfully, left you behind. A dark night of the soul must be had in order to progress spiritually and awaken. A process of spiritual progress is spiritual awakening. It is realizing the truth about who we are, how the world works, and the contrast between light and evil within. Although it is not frequent, hardly everyone experiences a dark night of the soul. Everything is delightful when we perceive the brightness of the world and ourselves. To comprehend one polarity, though, we have to experience and comprehend the opposite. To comprehend and be aware of the light, we must first experience and comprehend the dark. The soul leaps ahead and tries to pull every aspect of ourselves along with it. We have to dissolve the ego and the parts of ourselves that do not align with the new frequency of the soul. In order to encounter, dissolve, and ascend into the higher frequency of our soul, the dark night of the soul drives the ego and buried aspects of ourselves to the surface. You cause and are responsible for the gloomy night. Your spirit and higher self are guiding you. Everything is in order. Maintaining your equilibrium while accepting the dissolution of the old soul is necessary. Even if it's difficult, you can go through this process. A lot of individuals have. Just keep in mind that nothing lasts forever. How long does a dark night last? A soul's black night lasts for as long it needs to. There are those who never go through a dark night of the soul. It can take weeks, months, or even years for others. One or more black nights of the soul might occur to you over an extended period of time. Your soul determines when it's time for you to go and how long it will take to go through a night of the soul. When your ego is trying to cling on to the status quo, but your soul is ready to move on to a new level, a black night may occur. It's possible that your ego needs to disappear and your soul must ascend to a greater level. You can undergo your metamorphosis gradually or all at once. 3 steps to finish it quicker and easier. The most important thing to realize is that the dark night of the soul and the process of spiritual awakening cannot be forced. It's a chance to let go of what has to be let go of, raise your vibration, and become a different version of yourself. When you have completed enough inner work to increase your vibration, emerge from the dark night and go ahead, your soul will know. You can choose to go through a peaceful and serene night of the soul or one filled with opposition and struggle. There are several ways to make a dark night of the soul easier to go through. 1. Give up. The first piece of advice is to give up and stop opposing the process. Things you avoid will continue to happen. Pushing something or someone away is the act of resisting. Something will push back against you with equal and opposite force if you oppose or push against it. Entering a dark night of the soul is the only way to get through it. You cannot get around it. 2. Inner work. The second piece of advice is to realize that our experiences on the outside are mirror images of our inner lives. Since we are powerless to alter the outer environment, we must alter ourselves. We need to have the guts to decide to go within, work on ourselves, and confront every part of ourselves that we have been keeping buried for far too long. Anything that comes to mind or feels during a dark night is something that has to be dealt with. Instead of running from the pain, embrace it. Instead of making it worse, this will make it go away. In order to resolve any conflicts between the old version of our ego and identity and the new growth of the soul, we must first accept the ideas and feelings that occur. To grow the ego towards a higher frequency that corresponds with the soul, we must endeavor to merge these components. 3. See the big picture. Seeing the greater picture and the cause of a soul dark night is the last piece of advice. This may be a lot simpler if you know what it is and why it is occurring. We have to make an effort to examine the event from a different angle, rather than only from the standpoint of a helpless, suffering human. We need to remind ourselves that everything is fleeting and make an effort to stay in touch with our souls and self. Everything is always changing. After a dark night, everything is usually brighter, better, and more advanced. We have to come to believe that our higher self and soul are constantly looking out for our best interests. Dark night of the soul and spiritual awakening. Spiritual awakening includes the dark night of the soul. There is no need to run from or be afraid of it. Breathing becomes much simpler when we comprehend the dark night of the soul and how to overcome it. We understand that the pain, gloom, and lack of direction are just transitory, and that there will be something far more meaningful on the other side. Either with bravery and strength, or with resistance, fighting, and denial, we might confront a dark night of the soul. We may either invite the ego along for the trip, or allow it to attempt to hold us where we are. In any case, our spirit is waiting for us to catch up and will endure whatever it takes to get there. You choose how to get there. The choice is yours.